Hey everybody! Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this Emma style giant paper flower. The supplies you're going to need for this are 50 or 65 pound cardstock. You can use scissors to cut these templates, or you can use a cutting machine and use the SVG cut files included. You'll also need a glue gun, and you'll need the templates themselves, which are linked below this video in the video description. If you are using a cutting machine and you should need to plug in the exact cutting machine measurements, you can find those petal measurements below in the video description as well. So we need to first cut our petals out, and I want you to cut out the following number of petals. You'll need to cut 26 extra large petals. This may vary slightly for everybody, so keep in mind that you might need to add 1 or 2 more or take 1 or 2 away. You'll need 10 large petals and 10 medium petals, 8 small petals, and the extra small petals I do not show in this video, but you can use them for when you're downsizing to make smaller flowers, so those are included. You'll also need to cut 3 poppy centers and 2 circle bases, 1 larger and 1 smaller. You can easily downsize this flower using the same templates, and you can just subtract use of the larger petals to downsize to a large, a medium, or a small, and just use the smaller sizes included for an overall smaller flower. So let's go ahead and get started. I am making the extra large flower in this video, and the first thing you're going to need to do is glue one of the smaller circles on top of the extra large circle that is included in the template, and this is just going to give us a guide when we're gluing our petals on. You also need to make sure you cut out all of your petals, and then to shape the petal, the little wings that are at the bottom of each petal, I want you just to add some glue to one side and sort of fold it over the other side like a cone shape. You'll need to do the same thing with all of your petals, extra large, large, medium, small, and extra small if you're using those as well. So just go ahead and do that with all of your petals. This will take a few minutes, and you can pause the video and then come back and follow me with the next step once you get all your petals put together. I'm going to be using 2 layers of the extra large petals for this effect. So we're going to start with those, and then I'm going to be moving on to the large and the medium and the small for the center of this flower once we get there. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue these on, and that smaller circle that we put in the middle there is going to act as a guide to help us be able to place it at an accurate depth every time we go around. So as I'm placing these petals onto this circle, I'm adding glue to the back side, and then I am just gauging according to that inner circle where the depth of placement needs to be, and then I'm able to follow that all the way around so that my flower turns out even, and I'm not like putting one petal a couple inches into the center closer or a couple inches too far out. Which is easy to do when you're just using your eye as a guide rather than something like a base as a guide. So that small circle on top is helping guide us as we go around to make sure our placement is even with our petals. So I'm just adding all of my extra large petals here and just placing glue on the back and pressing them down. It's pretty easy to keep these even. Just where they start to barely touch each other is how far you want to place them apart. They don't need to be overlapping each other. They don't need to be spread super far apart. Just keep them to where they're just touching each other barely. Okay, so my first row of extra large petals is now all accounted for. So we're just gonna repeat now with our second layer of extra large petals around. So I've cut out another, I think it was like 12, I think I ended up with 12 additional extra large petals here for the second layer, and yours might vary a little bit, that's completely fine. You wanna aim to place this layer in between the previous layer. So each petal you're adding should go in between and existing petals below it. So you see how I'm placing it in between, so it's alternating. And you want to bring it in about an inch, 3/4 to an inch deeper into the flower. We don't want it to be exactly in line with the same depth as the outer layer of the lower layer of petals, but we do want it to be brought in just a little bit more to the center. So just bring it in about an inch and aim to get those petals in between the petals in the first layer. Now, as you go around, that might start to change a little bit. If you feel like it's like kind of hard to at some point get those petals exactly in between, that's okay. Mine's not perfect either. It might start to kind of angle itself out just a little bit because the petal placement is going to vary a little bit for everybody. But that's totally fine. It's okay if you don't get it perfectly placed in between. We just don't want it to be stacked directly on top so that the flower looks like it's blooming a little bit more. So just aim to alternate it with the layer below it. Okay, so you should have something that sort of resembles this at this point, and everyone's might vary a little bit, and remember, practice does make perfect. But I'm now going to be moving on to my large petals, and we're just going to keep repeating the exact same thing here. I'm adding glue to the back side, and I'm now placing it right into the center of that flower, and I'm aiming to alternate that petal that I'm placing, the large petal, with the extra large petals below it so that they are placed in between. And just go around your flower again with your large petals. I think I ended up with about 10 large petals here, 10 or 11, and that might vary for everybody, especially if you happen to be downsizing your flower and making smaller versions of it. So it will vary a little bit, but whatever fits well into your flower is what you should land on for the quantity of petals, because you don't want to look like you're trying to shove extra petals in there and then things just are really uneven. So if you can only fit 8 or 9 and that looks best, then 8 or 9 is your number. That's good. It doesn't have to be exact. So just go ahead and add all those extra large petals in, and then we'll move on to the medium. Okay, so I've added all of my large petals in now, and it looks something like this at this point. So we're going to move on to our medium petals, and we're just going to keep doing the same thing. We're just going to keep alternating with the petals below it. At this point, you want to make sure you're adding your glue, definitely towards the tip, and you're really going to be pushing that tip down because your flower is now going to sort of start to angle itself up even more as we close that center in. So just make sure you're kind of, using the tip of your finger to really press that tip down. And if your petals are popping up at all, make sure you just hold it until the glue really starts to dry and grabs on, which is why I recommend hot glue because it dries really quickly. Okay, so all my medium petals have been added in, and now I'm moving on to my small petals. At this point, the center bud of your flower is going to be getting rather tight, so you may not be able to place them all exactly in between the layer that we added below it, the medium petals. It can be helpful to kind of just fill the center with your small petals to get an idea of how it might come together before you start adding glue, which is what I just did there. And again, whatever fits best for the center of your flower is what you should stick with. I think I ended up with like maybe 5 or 6 small petals here. And I did not add any extra small petals because my center was pretty well closed after the small for this extra large flower that I'm making. But if you are creating smaller variations of this flower and just using like the medium and small petals, and then you want the extra small petals for the center of a smaller flower, then you might want to use those as well. If you have extra space in the center of your extra large flower, then you can of course cut out some extra small petals and add those in. But that's completely left up to your preference and how the style of your flower came together and how open or closed the center of your flower might be at this point. And you're really going to have those petals are really going to be standing pretty straight up at this point. So use your finger or something like a wood dowel to sort of press the tip of the petal down to make sure the glue is making good contact with the bottom of the center so that nothing comes up on you or anything like that. So I was able to get 5 small petals in initially there, and I'm just going to take, I think, like 3 of my remaining small petals that I already have made, and I'm just going to sort of tuck 3 more petals right there in the center. I can fit that comfortably. If you wanted to make these extra small petals instead, you could, but I'm happy using my small petals that I already had cut out and had extra of those, so I'm just adding the last 3 right there in the center, and that's about all the space I have. So once you run out of space and things are pretty much all closed there with the center of the bud of the flower, then you can stop adding petals. Alright, so essentially my flower is finished at this point, but I'm just going to add a little bit of a center piece to it to finish it off. And this is the poppy center that comes in the templates. And I'm just going to use my fingers here to just sort of fold the stamen of the poppy straight up and kind of crease it a little bit at the bottom and pinch it. And then I'm just going to layer these 3 pieces together. So I'm just going to add a dot of glue to the back of one, place it into the center of another, hold it for a second until it dries, and then sort of fold the other one up around that piece and repeat again with that last poppy center piece that we have there. Adding a little bit of glue and then just placing it into the center of that last piece. And just kind of get it all folded up there. You can sort of pinch the bottom a little bit to get those little stamen pieces to stand up. And then this is what we're just going to add into the center of the flower to complete the look. And this is optional if you want to leave your flower the way it is. It looks pretty good as it is, but I like to add a little bit of a finishing touch. And essentially now your Emma style Dahlia giant paper flower is completely finished. And I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. This is one of our bigger flowers. It's actually measured a little over 24 inches for me. And I made a downsized version with a large and a medium here in this picture that you see. So you can see how you can downsize those really easily and they turn out equally as beautiful. So this is a really fun flower and I hope you guys enjoy it. And you can find the templates below if you are interested in them. And I will see y'all in the next video. For templates and tutorials, visit AbbiKirstenCollections.com or shop this template on CatchingColorflies.com.